Hello, everyone. My name is Aisha White. I am the Digital Content Manager with Visit Henry County, Georgia. And today I am speaking with Senior Pastor Erik Vance of Floyd Chapel Baptist Church. Pastor Vance, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to connect with you, connect with the community, and to connect with Henry County, or better yet, the world. Since we're digital, everything now is just the click of a button. So we're connecting with the world.
Definitely. And I think that that's a great goal to point out too with tourism and wanting people from all over to be able to travel to Henry County and learn more about Henry County. So I want to start with the first question, which is just kind of allowing you to introduce yourself. So if you could let everyone who's watching know what was your journey to this point as senior pastor of Floyd Chapel Baptist Church?
So I have served as a collegiate pastor here locally on the campus of Clark Atlanta University and Georgia State University as well. So I've kind of made a name for myself here locally as one of the top young adult preachers, teachers here locally. And it was a season where I felt like that season was starting to expire because I really became comfortable with the youth pastor, young adult pastor, and pastoring on a collegiate level. And I started feeling the strong unction in my heart that I would be moving forward to a senior pastorate. So I did my matriculation at Morehouse School of Religion. Morehouse School of Religion is a Baptist seminary at the ITC in the Atlanta University Center. So prior to me graduating and being a college pastor on Clark Atlanta's campus, I received the Martin Luther King Senior Award while feeling like my season was expiring as a college pastor. Now, the Martin Luther King Senior Award was one of the highest awards for the seminary, those who attend seminary. A lot of people want that Martin Luther Senior Award because Martin Luther King Senior, he was a Morehouse School of Religion alumni as well. So during that time, I asked one of my deans, I said, how did I win the Martin Luther King Senior Award? Like me, I'm just a normal, just cool, down to earth kind of guy. I don't come from a background of bishops and politicians and all of those different guys who come to Morehouse School of Religion. And he told me that it would make sense at some point in life. And he was very brief about it. So during this time of transitioning, people was calling me all around the country seeking a pastor. And me and my wife was going on a little mini world tour. But I heard about Floyd Chapel once and I kind of brushed it off because I didn't know much about Stockbridge. I live in Fayetteville, so young adults, we go to the city. We don't go to Stockbridge. So I heard about it once. I didn't move. I heard about it again from this lady. She's a politician named Carlotta Harrell. I was volunteering and she was bagging lunches, sack lunches and bottled waters. And her station was beside me. And she was asking about my goals, my inspirations, and because a lot of people who were bagging the lunches, they were in the church world. So I told her my goals, my inspirations, and the next season that I have in my life. I told her specifically, I'm being called to a senior pastorate. And she said, there's a church called Floyd Chapel in Stockbridge, Georgia. I don't know if you're familiar with Stockbridge, but I think they're looking for a pastor. And I literally ignored it for the second time. I'm like, I've heard about this Floyd Chapel, but I don't really know much about Stockbridge. And I remember clear as day, I received a call from one of my deans. And they asked me, how far are you from Stockbridge, Georgia? I said, well, I live in Fayetteville. I'm thinking it's like 16 miles, 17 miles. He told me specifically that it's a vacant pulpit in Stockbridge, and this is the name of the church. He said, go look at it, tell me your thoughts, and if it's something that you feel like you're interested in, let me know, and we'll get you a letter of recommendation and let them know about the works that you've done in the inner city, and we'll just recommend you. So I went and I looked, and when I went to the church, I saw the green marquee outside of the church. It was like one of those experiences where you just get numb while reading the history. And I saw that Martin Luther King Sr. was licensed and ordained at Floyd Chapel Baptist Church. And it was like one of those aha moments where you just sit there and you have to pinch yourself, because the first time when I won the Martin Luther King Sr. Award, my dean said it may not make sense now, but it's going to make sense at some point in life. And in less than 6 months, I'm sitting there. Now it's making sense to me. And I preached. I went there. I preached. They called me the first Sunday, the last Sunday in January. I preached one Sunday, and then the voice started getting louder in the church. And then the next Sunday, people start saying, "You my pastor, you our new pastor," and the people start loving me. The third Sunday, the Bible studies and the community is rallying around me. And then on February the 23rd, the church announced me as the new pastor-elect of Floyd Chapel Baptist Church, and I've been there ever since.
That's a really awesome story. I know we had some conversation about your background, but I didn't know about the award and how it comes full circle. So that's awesome. I bet that was like quite the experience for it to hit you, like as you're reading the marker outside.
Yes, isn't that like, seems like, the not being overly spiritualized, but doesn't that seem like just the providence of God? Like,
I think if any, time, speaking spirituality, then it would make sense outside of the church for it to happen. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very, very important story, I think, how it came together. And I'm going to reference that and ask you a little bit about that history with MLK Sr. But first, I want to ask you about the overall history of the church, because it's awesome because of its tie to MLK Sr., but also the church itself recently celebrated 142 years, which is huge. Are you able to tell me a little bit about the history of the church and kind of like the people that were involved and its goal in the community?
So 142 years, talk about passing the test of time. Oh my God. So 142 years. So as we know, bringing you up to speed, I came into this pastorate when the pandemic, I'm now the senior pastor now, the pandemic has come. So traditionally they would celebrate their anniversary kind of like a week before Pentecostal Sunday. But however, with being strategic and being innovative, I thought, let's combine the church anniversary and the Pentecostal Sunday, because Pentecostal Sunday is a representation of the birth of the church, when the church actually began. So I combined both of those stories together, and it was just a blessing. We did an outdoor service, and CBS 46 picked the story up, and Atlanta Channel 2 picked the story up. I said, I'm just going to try my luck like on a Wednesday and just telling the storyline of the church. I sent out press releases, and I woke up the next morning and people were calling me trying to pick up the story, because it's an interesting story. I mean, Floyd Chapel Baptist Church has been here 142 years, has been a beacon of light in the community. But an interesting fact about Floyd Chapel Baptist Church is that it also housed slaves. They're the historic Underground Railroad. So when slaves were seeking freedom, Floyd Chapel Baptist Church was actually a stop where slaves would stop in Stockbridge, would come, and the church would house them. The church would provide food and allow them to get rest, allow them to get revived and rejuvenated, and allow them to go to the next stop while seeking freedom. And that's just an interesting point about the history, because that's the church, the responsibility of the church, for people to come and to feel genuine organic community and to sense spiritual freedom, just liberation and freedom. And that's also a symbolic piece of the history of Floyd Chapel Baptist Church.
Wow, that's really, really interesting. And I think once again that fits so, perfectly into that piece, that overall story. Just knowing that it had that much impact on the community, and to go from being like, I'm not really aware of it, to fully immersing yourself in it, and now being a part of the story. That's amazing.
But here's another interesting fact. So the church that we're in now, I don't want to miscalculate the years, but there was a time where there were a previous Floyd Chapel Baptist Church on Old Atlanta Road on there in Stockbridge, and the church was burned down, and the church combined with United Methodist Church that's around the corner from us, and they collaborated and did church collectively for a while until we were able to get a new building built, and it's the representation of where we are right now. So
I appreciate you making that note, yeah, because for historical accuracy and people being able to trace it back. So that's also an interesting fact, but important to know.
I love history.
Yeah, I know you were saying how passionate you are about history and education and everything. I want to ask you more about that too. I think it's interesting the point you were making about like the Floyd Chapel's role in the Underground Railroad and how it housed people and everything, and looking at that timeline and moving forward a little bit, and seeing Jim Crow era laws in place, and MLK Sr. Being born in Stockbridge and experiencing that, and his experiences having an impact on the life he decided to lead, and wanting to be in ministry and ultimately be a part of civil rights. So can you speak a little bit about MLK Sr.'s history or his tie to the church also?
So Martin Luther King Sr., he was licensed, preached his first sermon, was licensed and ordained there at Floyd Chapel Baptist Church. And here's another historical point about Floyd Chapel Baptist Church, is that it was not only a place where people would come for their spiritual needs, but Floyd Chapel was also an academy as well. So Martin Luther King Sr., not only did he go to church there, he was educated there in the church as well. There was a pastor during his childhood by the name of Pastor Lowe. And Pastor Lowe, he served as a pastor, and he also served as a teacher as well, where kids in the community would come to church there at Floyd Chapel. So it was not only a church, but it was also an academy. And traditionally, you would see the Black church. It was a place, it was a one-stop shop. I mean, you could come to the church for almost everything, and you would see churches as you pass. If you look hard enough, you would see churches that it looks like a church in the front, but as you go toward the back, you would see like playgrounds and other things, because I think there's a strong correlation between the academy and the spiritual world. I don't see one greater than the other one. They're both are equally a calling from God. So he was licensed, he was ordained, preached his first sermon there. Now the oral tradition of the church, just with talking to older members of the church, and stories that has been passed down from tradition to tradition, is that Martin Luther King Sr., he was very passionate about racial injustices and civil rights before his son was raised, and he was speaking boldly and speaking loudly in the city of Stockbridge. And the oral tradition says that it was the KKK that ran the King family out of Stockbridge that allowed them to be landed in the city of Atlanta.
Once again, an important fact to note, just how someone's negative experiences can impact them. And in this case, that it impacted him in a positive way, and made him want to make change for himself, his family, and for others, and then ultimately influenced MLK Jr., who, world renowned. That's the figure so many of us are aware of, but he even credits his father, with his lifestyle and the change that he made. So I think it's huge for people to know, what it's rooted in and where it came from his father's legacy, and even before that, his experiences growing up in Stockbridge. So
But I feel like that's with me loving history, me having the Morehouse connection. I feel like that I'm here to emphasize the importance of Daddy King, that he had his own individual legacy as well. They say the apple don't fall too far from the tree. So we all talk about the son, but let's talk about the father as well, because he accomplished some things on his own, and he was adamant about social justice and the right, equal rights for people of color.
yeah, definitely. So much so, I agree with what you're saying. Just being able to understand his history and what contributions he made, because they're large and they're not to be overlooked or underestimated. So with that, thinking in terms of history, your love for history, your love for education, um, how does that tie into your overall vision for what you want to see Floyd Chapel Baptist Church become, and the role that you would like to play in the church?
There's a saying that goes, in order to know where you're going, you must first know your history. So that's important with us as human beings or being a part of an organization. In marketing and business, we call it trend projections. So you're able to see when an organization was peaking, and then you're able to see during their through period. And I go back and look at when things were going well, when things were smooth, and just looking at history components, education being a great deal to me and important to me. It was also a piece of the history of Floyd Chapel Baptist Church. I believe in order to be all that God has called you to be, the Bible talks about my people perish because of the lack of knowledge. Um, so therefore, you can't receive what's available if you don't know what's available. And that comes by being educated. So education has been important to me, and just education for people of color, education for Black people, give us a 90% chance to break out of poverty. That's important to me. That's important to a community. So if that's important to me, and God has blessed me in that area, I believe that the new church, you can't just be called. No, you need to be anointed, called, and educated to push forward great ideas, innovation, forward mobility. And in the future, I would like to restore that educational component to the community with possibly partnering with Henry County Public Schools, allowing our facilities to be an after school program. So for kids who are deficient in science and deficient in math, where they can come and get some extra support with an after school program using our fellowship hall, where we're not only providing spiritual needs, but now we're helping where education is concerned. And that gives us an opportunity to pour into the next lawyer, the next politician, the next person who have a great a trade idea, innovation. And I think that that's a spiritual aspect and responsibility of the church as well. Benjamin E. Mays, who is the former president of Morehouse College, he had a statement that says, education is my salvation. And I think that's a very, very powerful statement, because he combined a spiritual practice and an academic practice as well, and he combined the two with salvation being equivalent to being educated. And I believe that that God has called me to lead people in the academy while leading them in the spiritual world as well.
That's wonderful. I think that that's a great combination of things. I think what themes that keep coming up, it seems like in the conversation, is the idea of community, like you said, education and your true passion for it, and the history of it. So being able to educate people on the history of the church and its entire legacy, and then motivating people to want to change in positive ways, to motivate people within the community, and educate the youth. I think it's all amazing. And
But I didn't touch on the fact of the ultimate goals is to have Floyd Chapel on a tour site where people can come from up north, south, east, and west from all. I don't believe that Floyd Chapel is just a local jewel. I believe that Floyd Chapel is a national jewel. The more that I connect with people like yourself, and the more that we express the story, we would love for Floyd Chapel to be open on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, where students can come from Atlanta public schools, Fulton County schools, Henry County schools, where I can tell the same story that I'm telling you now in multiple blocks throughout the day, where they can walk around the church and feel the ambiance of the church and see pictures around the church of the King legacy, some of our oldest standing deacons, or the Eastern Star and the Masons that was birthed out of the church, the old church before it was burnt down. And we could use that time and give them a tour, and just it be a historical moment. So the same thing that I'm doing professionally in the academy, I would love for Floyd Chapel to be a tour site where multiple times a day I'm telling the history of Martin Luther King Sr. with possibly having a sermon in the background as well, where students can hear some of his old sermons. So I've collected some artifacts of some of his old pictures and some of his old sermons as well. So that's a project that we're currently working on at this moment.
And it's definitely exciting. I know that you were telling me, touching on that earlier, if you want to just, describe it now, some of the stories that you had about either people kind of taking pictures of the markers, or even someone who had visited from far away. Was it a different state?
Yes. So I've had some unique experience here lately. So as of lately, the church has been receiving a lot of exposure. A lot of members has been telling me that we kind of knew about the history, but with you coming to the church and you being an educator and a history lover as well, you have like literally pushed the story to the forefront. And I've been telling the story, and I tell it frequently and telling it often. But at this point, people have started coming to the church, and if you just sit in the parking lot on any given day, you would see people from different ethnic groups just pull up and take pictures of the green sign in front of the church that explains the history, taking pictures of the Martin Luther King Jr. Trail, and I'm seeing an influx of people coming, and that has just been a blessing. There was a guy who came from Texas maybe 3 weeks ago. This guy was really intentional about just wanting to walk in the church and wanting to feel the ambiance of the church. And I allowed him to walk in the church, but the experience that he was having, it was also another aha moment for me as well, because I'm like, people is finding out about this church through different mass media platforms. This church can be open multiple times of the week, where people can walk, come around, feel the ambiance just like him, lovers of history, and just want to see where the legacy began. And that was interesting that someone from Texas came all the way to Atlanta and specifically stopped at Floyd Chapel, and he gave me some very, very spiritual, important words. He was like, be encouraged. You can do it. I'm 100% convinced that you carry the forward mobility for this church to get it to the next level. Now, granted, I didn't know this guy from, as we say in Southern vernacular, I didn't know him from a can of paint. And it was mind blowing that people who I meet who come to the church everyone, I feel the excitement with the city of Stockbridge and people in the political world excited about that the church has a young leader who is vibrant and innovative and have the ability to grow as the city grow. I feel the excitement. I feel you all's excitement, and we share that same excitement with Floyd Chapel Baptist Church as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think that was a great point that you made. That, of course, a church is at the center of a community, but with this story that it has, it appeals to people from all over the place, whether it's all over the country or internationally. People have some sort of stake in this and interest in the history of it and the interest in its key roles in civil rights and being able to house people who really needed it at that time. And so,
But you know what I keep hearing when people come? People say, I lived in Stockbridge, I lived in Henry County my whole life, and uh, I saw this in Visit Henry, or I saw the blog, or I saw you guys on the news. And when the news covered the story, there were people. We had an outside service. There were people. The parking lot in front of the church was filled with people. We closed the streets off. People was filled, and up to Nolan Street, where Food Depot was, there were people parked in their cars, and it was just a beautiful thing. And thanks to mass media communication, you guys, I think you guys shared the flyer as well, and just the help of the community, because the goals and the responsibilities of the church is to be a beacon of light in the community in which you are planted.
yeah, definitely. So I think that's a great segue into my final question to you, which is what inspires you to do what you do from day to day?
Knowing that my life doesn't belong to me, that um, my life is a public good. I'm here to inspire people. I'm here to help people. I'm here to, if people hit a jam in life, I'm here to push them to be all that they are called to be and do in their lives. And just being driven by purpose, being driven by the dream. You know, Martin Luther King talked about the dream and being purpose driven, being goal driven, and knowing that, you know, we only have one life, and I have an opportunity to leave a legacy. And I oftentimes remind myself and ask myself the question, what will you be remembered for? What type of legacy are you writing? Uh, 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 and you want people to know that you actually lived, and that you just didn't exist, that you actually lived and you just didn't exist. And when I say by living, is that exhausting every opportunity, being a servant to mankind, and just spreading the love and spreading hope and spreading information by making someone else's life better.
That was beautifully worded. I'm like, that's powerful and it's encouraging. I hope it's encouraging to anybody who's watching this because that's huge. And just that overall thing of leaving a legacy, that's what inspires you and the huge legacy of the church overall. So it's like it's all meant to be. So yeah, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me and anybody else watching about Floyd Chapel Baptist Church, about its history, about your role in the church, and your overall vision for it. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm thankful for you also. If there's any young adults, millennials, or people in general in the area who would love to come and fellowship with us, we are a small church with a big old heart, a place of healing, love, and restoration. You can come and expect some sound, academic, scholarly teaching and preaching, and just a fresh feel. Our church is very traditional, but I'm more liberal and progressive, and we find a healthy place where we combine both like peanut butter and jelly.
Anyone is interested in finding out more about Floyd Chapel Baptist Church, is there anywhere you want to point them? Website, telephone number, or anything like that? Social media?
So right now our website is 90% of being finished. You see something, you want to pull it back, don't want to go live. So, but it's www.floydchapel.org, www.floydchapel.org, and we're on every form of social media. You can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Twitter, Floyd Chapel BC, Floyd Chapel BC, and we're also on Facebook as well. As far as myself, I'm Pastor Erik Vance. You could put in Eric, just Pastor Erik Vance, and you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of the social media platforms. But we would love to connect with you, connect with all and everyone who this broadcast touched. We would love to welcome you all in and just have an experience with us at Floyd Chapel Baptist Church.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Have a great day.